Hey guys and girls, it's a great evening out here in Oklahoma. It is hot, it is still summertime, and one of the hot baits is a mushroom head jig, commonly known as a Ned Rig. So let's talk a little bit about a Ned Rig, see if we can catch a fish or two on it and talk about it a little bit. A Ned Rig is a mushroom head jig, and basically it's become some tiny baits. In other words, like little small jigs with little small baits on it. And to be honest with you, I've been fishing little small jigs with little small weights on it ever since I was a teenager. I actually had a BASS tournament at the Lake Ouachita that I got second place in that tournament, fishing with basically a Ned Rig. We was fishing with a little round jig, a flat-headed jig about the size of your thumbnail. Just a little tiny flat-headed jig, weighed maybe, I don't know, maybe weighed not quite an eighth of an ounce, maybe an eighth of an ounce, but probably not quite. And we were putting a little tiny worm on the back of it. Today, that would be known as a Ned Rig. And I was fishing 6-pound test line. My buddy over there, and I'd met a couple of years before that tournament, David Owens, and was a great fisherman over there in that area, gave me some of those, said if you ever fish a tournament on Ouachita, go down in that really clear water and use this bait. And I did, and sure enough, finished second at BASS tournament. Should have won the tournament. There's a story behind losing it, like there always is. Won't bore you with that right now. But Jerry Ryan won the tournament. I got second. Hank Parker, my buddy Hank Parker, got third. Hank Parker was generally in the tournaments down below where I was in the tournaments, just so you know. You know, something you might not know about Hank Parker, he's a great guy, great friend. Hank Parker is actually younger than I am. You can't tell it by looking at him, and you wouldn't know it just by looking, but he is actually younger than I am. Just wanted to throw that out there just so you'd know. But we were using a Ned Rig basically back then. This is a mushroom head jig that you buy at Bass Pro Shop. Now, here's the deal. When I'm in cover, like I'm fishing today, I'm fishing around grass and wood, I like to use a weed guard on these things. You see that right there? You can buy it with or without a weed guard. Without a weed guard, more than likely, you're probably going to get more hookups. But with a weed guard on there, if you're fishing in the brush, you're going to get hung up a lot less and go through a lot less baits. Now, there's a lot of baits that's specifically made for these baits. Now, I've got this on 20-pound braid tied directly to it. Yeah, I'm just out here fishing for the fun of it. Probably not going to get quite as many bites fishing with your braid tied directly to it. But this is green, high seas braid. So it's green, it's really impossible for the fish to see, and it really works almost as good as fluorocarbon coated or pure fluorocarbon line, and yet you got 20-pound going all the way down to the hook. So, you know, if you're around a lot of big fish, you might want to consider just going tying directly to that with your braided line. On spinning reels, we fish these little tiny baits, mostly with spinning reels. Now, I move up to bigger baits and use them with a casting reel, and this actually is a 1/4 ounce bait right here. And I'm doing that because it's summertime, the fish are down deep, they're not up shallow, you know, yet. They ought to be coming up real quick, but the water's still almost 90 degrees. But so I've got a 1/4 ounce bait on here. And the baits that we use on this thing, there's a lot of baits that's made, you know, made exactly for this type bait, a mushroom head or a Ned head bait. But you can use any kind of baits on it. Now, one of the more popular baits, let me grab my scissors here. One of the more popular baits to use is actually almost like the end of a pow stick. And so what I'll do, and now I'm going to use a brand new one here, but normally I don't do that. You want to use about that much of it. So I'm going to come down here and just take my scissors. I use a little bit less, about that much of it. Come down here with my scissors. I'm just going to cut that off. Now, if I want to, I've got the pointed end. If I want to, I can use the other end of that too. Probably will. But now here's one of the things that I do that is very, very, very critical. When I put this little piece of plastic on here, I want it to stay on. I want to be able to catch several fish on it. So I'm going to go ahead and start it on like I would normally have it. I want it to be nice and straight. Go right through the center of that. I'm going to come up to right here. Now, before I push it up here, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take me some glue. This is Gorilla Glue right here. Take me some glue, and I'm going to put a drop or two of glue right on that head. Just a drop's about all you need, just a little bit. Wipe that off. Put that on there so that doesn't ruin. And then I'm going to just kind of push that on up there like you normally would. It's got that glue on there, and that's going to glue to that head. I'm going to push it up there real good and tight and let that glue to that head. Hold it on there for just a few seconds. Now I've got my little Ned Rig rigged up just exactly right. I'll let that get nice and solid on there, and just wait a few seconds on that. You can rig these up ahead of time, rig a few of them ahead of time if you want. I normally don't do it. I normally glue them right out there in the middle of a tournament if I need to, but I don't really, you know, that bait now will catch quite a few different fish before it hangs up properly. Okay, there we go. Now that little bait doesn't look like much of anything. It's not going to have a great deal of action, but it doesn't need a great deal of action. What you're going to do is you're going to put that down there where the fish are. First cast with that Blaze Series rod. Check my drag. I better tighten that up a bunch. Better tighten it up a little more. And then what I'm going to do on that, you know, we're out here right now in 14 foot of water, so I'm going to throw it out there and let it go all the way to bottom. And then I'm just going to bounce it a little bit. You know, I'll fish that thing a lot of different ways, but thought I had a bite. Might not have. Felt like a bite. Now this thing will catch crappie and bluegill and catfish and everything else because it's a little tiny. I got a lot of grass and stuff down there. Looky there, first throw. Looky there, first throw. This is not a big fish. No, it wasn't too bad. Came off. Came off. If you'll notice, well, I actually did pull it down a little bit. I probably didn't let that thing dry good enough. Probably should have let that dry a little bit longer. I was in a hurry to go fishing. Probably should have let it. That's the first throw there. I got right out on the edge of the grass where it fell off into the deeper water. I'm going to try to throw right to the edge of the grass if I can. I'll let that bait go all the way to bottom. And all I'm doing is raising it, shaking it, raising it, shaking it, raising it, shaking it. Actually, you can swim that bait. I've got a grandson that basically all he does is throw it out there and slowly wind it back in. And that's his favorite bait in the whole world. It's a wonderful bait to take kids fishing because and particularly if you'll buy these shroom heads that's got that weed guard on there, they're still going to get hung up some, but they won't get hung up nearly as much. And if you got that weed guard on there, you know, they're going to get by and they can catch fish on it. Basically, the fish a lot of times will catch yourself. It's a little bit like a sinking worm. Sometimes the fish actually catch themselves on that thing. I get out there at the edge of that grass, let that thing fall, and that's where I got that last bite. Should get some more bites in there. You know, one of the things that I like to do on a Ned rig is use the tail ends of a lot of other types of soft plastics. Just like I did on this pow stick, I just used the tail ends of it, and that's all. Just cut the tail end of it off, and they actually make a bait that looks just like that they make for this bait. But that's all it is the end of a pow stick, a sinking worm. But you can take a lot of the other worms you use, and take a lot of the worms that you're using, and once you tear up the middle part of that worm, take your scissors, cut the end of it off, whether it's a little curly tail, a little straight tail, whatever it is, cut that off and put that on some of your mushroom head jigs and try it. Works really, 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 really well. It's a real good technique and a real good thing to use up some of the worms. Golly, look at that. Is that President Trump? Hello, Mr. President. Hello, Mr. President. I wonder if he'd like to come down and go bass fishing. I don't know what he's doing today. I think he's at a campaign rally. Surely that's not him. Could be, I don't know. I got it off that tree and the fish hit it. What's a good fish, too? That's when you're glad you don't have a 6-pound leader on that. That's a good fish right there. Oh, yeah, look at that. I got it hung on a tree. I got it hung on a tree and I shook it and got it off that tree. When I got off that tree, he whacked it. I was shaking that thing up there and got it in that tree. Oh, yeah, looky there. That's a good fish right there. Oh, yeah, you took my rod away from me. Looky there, sports fans. Now, you probably should not do that. But I've got 20-pound test line on there. A little tiny Ned rig, 20-pound test line. Looky there. Now, that, and see, here's another thing when you got that weed guard on there that's a really big advantage. See the weed guard? It's kind of got him trapped where he can't get rid of that bait. See that? It's hard to get rid of the bait. I have to kind of get the weed guard out of the way a little bit in order to unhook the fish. So that's the president just came back. He looks down here and sees this. He's liable to give me a Congressional Medal of Honor. Look at that right there. Is that something? That is a big old bass. Don't think that you're fishing just for little fish when you're fishing a mushroom head jig, because you're fishing for big fish also. That fish is a nice healthy fish right there. that other fish I had a minute ago was not very healthy. So that's a couple, 2 or 3 ways to fish it. You can drag that thing along the bottom, but I like to pop it and move it around. Again, you can turn that bait around, find you a new area to put your hook in, slide it back up there. That would not, if I'd have got that glued. Now that's a bad rig right there. You see what I did right there? Don't do that. That is crooked. It's not good. And what happened, so I'm going to have to just pull it off there and get it where it's just nice and straight. I'm going to turn it around, come up here again and make me another deal through here because I want that to be straight. I have to go a little bit further down into the worm. That's what I want right there. You see what I've got right now? That's what I want right there. I want that straight. And like I said, another technique, particularly if you're fishing at, you know, gentle sloping banks around the rocks, you can just take that thing, throw it out there like I'm doing right there. Let her fall. Just kind of slow roll it back in, just like slow rolling a spinnerbait. Let it kind of slow roll back in. They'll bite that thing. My grandson, Lightning, it's his favorite bait in the whole world right here. A turd jig's what he calls it. You know, he calls it a turd jig. I think he just likes to call it that. And basically what he does with it most of the time is just swim it. Now I kind of have a hard time doing that totally because I like for that thing to hit the bottom. But now I'm up over some grass right there. It hits that, see, it's got a little grass on the bait. Throw that thing out there and just swim it. I got it over that grass, just swim that thing back. If you feel it tick the grass, lift it up. Coming back there, feel the thing tick the grass, lift it up a little bit. That's all I'm doing is just swimming it. One other key thing to remember, guys and girls, with a Ned Rig or a mushroom head jig is if you're having a hard time getting a bite, move down to a smaller weight. Move to a smaller weight. I've been catching these fish on a 1/4 ounce because I've been fishing down pretty deep. When I got up in the grass, really getting hung up a lot in the grass and didn't get any bites that way. But if you're having trouble getting bites, move to a smaller and smaller weight. The tournament I talked about over there at Lake Ouachita, the water's crystal clear, fishing 6-pound test line. And I don't think they were an 1/8 ounce, maybe like a 1/16 ounce head. Little tiny flat heads with little tiny 2- and 3-inch worms on them. And this was back 40 years ago, way before anything was ever come about mushroom head jigs. A little round-headed jig that's not, it wasn't round, it was kind of flat like a dime, but not nearly that big around and really tiny. But the key was the tininess of it. And so if you're in really, really clear water, if you're having a hard time getting a bite, but listen to me, don't be afraid to fish a mushroom head jig in dingy water. Don't be afraid to fish it around brush. Buy you those at Bass Pro Shop. It's got that little weed guard on them. You can still get them hung up. You've seen that right there. Still get them hung up, but they won't get hung up nearly as much. Fishing gravel banks, mud banks, sand banks, use them without a weed guard. But the weed guard, a lot of times, once you hook the fish, will keep the fish from coming unbuttoned. So try that mushroom head jig. It's a great way to catch fish. Use it mostly on a spinning rod. I've got this tied directly to braid and had no problem getting bites on it. So use that bait and you're going to catch a lot of fish and have a lot of fun. The key is getting where the fish are, moving that bait where they like to find it. And the other thing is that it is tiny, small bait, something so imperceptible that it's easy to feel the fish, make them think that it's something good to eat. Hey guys and girls, it is hot summertime out here and we have been having a blast catching fish today. We appreciate y'all being involved in our YouTube channel. We have grown about 20,000 subscribers since we started this thing back in the end of February, and so we're just tickled to death. It's all because of y'all. Hey, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to Jimmy Houston Outdoors YouTube. Hit that notification bell. If you find a video you really like, share it with 8 or 10 of your friends. Let's see how quickly we can get this thing to 100,000. Then we'll see. We don't know where it'll go. Later, guys and girls. I love you.